The evening air was warm and thick with the scent of blooming jasmine as I sat on the back porch, my eyes lost in the quiet lap of the lake's waves against the shore. It was supposed to be a joyous celebration, our 5th wedding anniversary, and yet, here I was, nursing a glass of bourbon, alone. The plan had been simple and, in a way, nostalgic. Carol and I thought revisiting the wild freedom of our bachelor and bachelorette parties would spark some of that old, reckless joy we felt years ago. I went off with my buddies for a weekend fishing trip at the old cabin by Lake Harris, the very place where I had my last hurrah as a bachelor. We spent the day laughing and reminiscing, the evening air echoing with the sounds of our camaraderie and the splash of our lines cast into the water. "You still got it, Mike!" Jason had cheered as I reeled in a particularly stubborn bass, slapping me on the back with a grin. As night fell, we sat around the campfire, the crackle of the flames mingling with our tales of the past and dreams for the future. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a reminder of the world beyond the woods. It was a message from Carol, but not the one I expected. Instead of her usual selfie with a cocktail, it was a video, sent to me by mistake, a heart-stopping glimpse into another reality. The grainy footage showed Carol laughing wildly, far louder than I'd ever heard before, her arm slung around a man I didn't recognize. A man whose shirt seemed just a bit too absent in the dim light of a bar I didn't know, his body too close to hers. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs as the phone slipped through my numb fingers. The next morning, I returned home earlier than planned, the weight of betrayal sinking deep into my bones. Carol was humming in the kitchen, a tune that now sounded like a melody of lies. She jumped when she saw me, her smile fading at the edges when she noticed the storm behind my eyes. "Mike, you're back early. How was the trip?" Her voice wavered slightly, a crack in her perfect facade. I tossed my phone onto the counter, the video playing again, casting the shadows of betrayal across our kitchen walls. "Interesting choice for a party, Carol. Care to explain?" Her face paled, eyes darting to the phone and then back to mine, her mouth opening and closing as if words had become foreign to her. "Mike, it's not what it looks like. He's just an old friend from." "Save it, Carol. Just save it." My voice was colder than I intended, the iciness of a planned revenge seeping through. I turned away, her protests fading into the background noise of my plotted retribution. Over the next few weeks, I gathered evidence, my every move calculated and precise. The trust that had once bound us together unraveled thread by thread as I prepared to cut the final cord. By the time our divorce papers were stamped, the woman I had married was no more than a stranger I was determined to forget. As the ink dried on the last document, my lawyer clapped me on the shoulder. "It's done, Mike. Are you sure you want to go through with the rest of your plan?" I nodded, the blueprint of my revenge clear and unwavering. She needs to learn, and I'm the one who will teach her. The chapter closed on our marriage, but the story of our intertwined fates was just beginning. With the seeds of vengeance firmly planted, I stepped into a future where the echoes of the past would shape my every move. The cafe was buzzing with the mid-morning rush, the clatter of dishes and murmur of conversations creating a facade of normalcy that belied the turmoil within me. As I sipped my coffee, my eyes locked on the entrance, waiting for the man who unknowingly played a central role in the unraveling of my marriage. Carol had called him an old friend, but the weeks of digging into her past had painted a different picture. His name was Alex, and he was more than just a friend. He was the thread that, once pulled, would unravel Carol's tapestry of deceit. He entered the cafe with a casual swagger, scanning the room until his eyes settled on me. Recognition flickered across his face, and he approached with a cautious smile. "Mike, right?" Alex extended his hand, which I shook with a firm grip that bordered on aggressive. "That's right. Have a seat, Alex." I gestured to the chair across from me, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Alex sat, his smile faltering under my intense gaze. "So, what's this about? Carol mentioned you might want to talk." "Oh, we're going to do more than talk," I said, leaning forward. "You see, I know about you and Carol. The party, the texts, the late-night calls." Alex's face hardened, the facade of innocence slipping away. Look, whatever you think is. I think I cut him off, that you owe me some honesty. After all, it's the least you can do. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right, Mike. Yes, Carol and I have been close. But it wasn't anything serious. Just some fun, that's all. I nodded, the blueprint repeated, the words bitter in my mouth. And my marriage was collateral damage to your fun? We never meant to hurt you, Alex said quickly. It just happened. Just happened, I echoed, my voice laced with sarcasm. Well, let me tell you what's going to happen now. Alex eyed me warily, sensing the shift in the air. What do you mean? I leaned back, my plan unfolding in my mind like a dark bloom. You're going to help me, Alex. Whether you like it or not. And why would I do that? His defiance was palpable, but so was his curiosity. Because if you don't, I said calmly, pulling out my phone to show him a series of messages and pictures, evidence of their affair. This goes to everyone. Your boss, your family, your friends. And let's not forget Carol's social circle. Alex paled, his eyes darting from the screen to my face. You wouldn't. I would. And I will, I said with a cold finality. Unless you help me with a little project. Consider it atonement for your sins. What kind of project? His voice was a mere whisper, resignation seeping into his tone. A special kind of reveal. You're going to help me set up a scenario where Carol confesses everything. On tape. And if I refuse? Then your life, as you know it, ends. Socially, professionally, maybe even personally, depending on how others take the news. Alex stared at me, his face a mask of defeat. All right. I'll do it. But after this, we're even. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We're far from even, Alex. But it's a start. As he left the cafe, a plan in place and his cooperation assured, I couldn't help but feel the stirrings of satisfaction. Revenge was a game best played cold, and I was just getting started. The room was dimly lit, the soft glow of the table lamp casting long shadows across the walls. I had chosen the hotel suite meticulously, ensuring it was isolated enough to not draw attention, yet opulent enough to not arouse suspicion. This was the stage where Carol's facade would crumble. Alex had done his part, his reluctance overridden by the threat of exposure. He had called Carol, his voice smooth over the phone, convincing her to meet him here for a discussion about their situation. I was a silent observer, tucked away in the adjoining room with a clear view through the one-way mirror. Carol arrived on time, her steps hesitant as she entered the suite. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, her face etched with lines of stress. Alex greeted her with a strained smile, offering her a seat and a glass of wine. Carol, thanks for coming, Alex began, his tone casual yet firm. We need to talk about what's been going on. Carol nodded, her fingers tracing the stem of her wine glass. I know, Alex. I've been feeling guilty. We need to end this, whatever this is. Alex leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. It's not just about ending things, Carol. There's more at stake now. Confusion flickered across Carol's face. What do you mean? I mean, Alex said, his voice lowering, Mike knows. Carol's glass clinked softly as she set it down, her complexion paling. He knows? How? What did you tell him? Not just what I told him, Carol, Alex replied, his tone sharpening. What he saw. Videos, messages. It's all out there. Her eyes widened with fear. Oh God, Alex, what have we done? What we've done can still be managed, Alex said, playing his role perfectly as he glanced toward the hidden camera. But you need to be honest with him, with everyone. It's the only way to mitigate the damage. Carol shook her head, her voice a whisper. I can't, how do I even begin to explain this? You start by telling the truth, Alex urged. You tell him everything, confess. Maybe then you can salvage some of what's left. Carol stood abruptly, her hands trembling. I need to think. I need to fix this. Alex stood as well, reaching out to stop her. Wait, Carol. There's something else. We're being watched. Now. This room, it's set up. Mike wanted a confession, and he's getting it one way or another. Carol froze, her gaze darting around the room, landing on the seemingly benign mirror. A flicker of realization crossed her face, and she turned back to Alex, betrayal written across her features. You set me up? It was the only way, Alex replied, his voice laced with a hint of regret. I'm sorry, Carol. It was this or ruin. The weight of her situation seemed to crush her, and she sank back into her chair, her face buried in her hands. What do I do now? You go ahead, Alex said softly. You confess, clear your conscience. Maybe it's not too late. As Carol nodded slowly, resigned to her fate, I stepped out from my hiding spot, my presence catching her off guard. She looked up at me, her eyes brimming with tears. Mike, Save it, Carol, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling within. Just tell the truth. It's all I want now. Her confession began, each word a nail in the coffin of our marriage, each sentence a step towards my cold, calculated retribution. This was just the beginning, the first act of a longer play, and the curtain was far from closing. The atmosphere was thick with tension as I watched Carol pour her heart out, her confession a mix of sobs and sincerity. The camera was rolling, capturing every moment of her undoing. Alex stood by, a silent spectator to the wreckage he had helped create. This was more than a confrontation, it was the climax of my carefully orchestrated revenge. Carol's voice broke as she admitted to everything, the secret meetings, the lies, even the foolishness of thinking it could remain hidden. I'm so sorry, Mike. I never wanted to hurt you, she pleaded, her eyes seeking any sign of forgiveness in mine. I stared back, my expression unreadable. You thought I'd never find out, Carol? That you could just toy with our lives and there'd be no consequences? My voice was calm, but underneath, the rage simmered, ready to boil over. Alex shifted uncomfortably, glancing between us, the guilt etching deeper into his features. He knew his role in this tragedy was as damning as Carol's. I know I can't undo what I've done, Mike. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends, Carol continued, her hands clenched in her lap as if holding onto the shards of her shattered life. Make amends? I scoffed. You think a simple apology will clean the slate? No, Carol. It's too late for that. I turned my gaze to Alex. I knew. You were supposed to be my friend. Alex's voice was low, filled with remorse. I know I've messed up, Mike. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't cut it. My voice rose, a sharp contrast to the controlled demeanor I had maintained. I pulled out my phone, displaying the barrage of messages and emails I had prepared to send out. Your families, your friends, your employers. Everyone will know the kind of people you are. Carol gasped, tears streaming down her face. Mike, please don't. Think about what this will do to. To what? Your reputations? I cut her off, my finger hovering over the send button. You should have thought about that before you betrayed me. With a single tap, the digital missiles were launched, sealing their fates as social pariahs. Carol's sobbing filled the room, a mournful soundtrack to the destruction of her world. Carol's voice broke as she admitted, "Stop there. I had one last card to play, a finale that would ensure our paths would never cross again. As for this house and everything in it," I said, my voice cold as ice, "consider it part of your penance." I handed Carol an envelope. "You'll find that I've transferred ownership of everything to you. I want no part of anything that reminds me of us." Carol looked at me, bewildered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm done." I turned to leave, pausing at the door to deliver the final blow. "Oh, and one last thing. The account you so liked using for your little escapades? It's been frozen. Consider it a parting gift." With that, I walked out of the hotel suite, the heavy door closing with a thud behind me. Outside, the crisp air felt like a balm to my soul, the first clean breath I'd taken in weeks. I walked away from the wreckage, a free man, but not unscathed. The scars of betrayal would linger, but they would also serve as a stark reminder never to make the same mistake again. As I disappeared into the bustling city, Carol and Alex were left to pick up the pieces of their now public disgrace. The game was over, and I had won, but the victory was bittersweet. In the end, the greatest deception wasn't theirs, but the illusion that revenge could ever truly heal a broken heart.